It's Thursday, December 17th, just 34 days from the inauguration, and really, I thought we were done with Ken Starr. Today on Vote for America, we'll be talking with the Lincoln Project's own Tom Nichols, Reed Galen, and Susan Del Percio. And now our host, Lincoln Project co-founder, Jennifer Horn.
And welcome to Vote for America on LPTV. We are so glad that you're with us today. It's going to be a great show. It is a great day. 34 days until Joe Biden is sworn in as the next president of the United States, and so much more out there for us to be optimistic about as well today. The vaccines are on the market. They are being administered. They are being sent out to the states and the patients. All good news, at least on the front of vaccines right now. And we have a president-elect who is filling his cabinet with competent, experienced, intelligent people. And may I say, a president-elect who does not tweet stupid stuff 3 times an hour for all of us to see. So I am excited about what the future holds. I hope that all of you are as well. We're also going to be celebrating today the 1-year anniversary of the Lincoln Project. And we're really happy to be able to celebrate it with you, because what we are at the Lincoln Project, anything that we've been able to advance and move forward has been because of the support and the enthusiasm and the help of millions of people across the country, millions of Americans just like yourself, who came to this cause with us, who understood and embraced how important it was for us to defend democracy. So we're so grateful that you were part of that, and really happy that you're here today. And we're going to be talking to some of the folks from the Lincoln Project. One of the co-founders, Reed Galen, is going to be with us. 2 of our senior advisors, Tom Nichols and Susan Del Percio. It's going to be a full show. But before we get to that, I just want to share with you for a minute or two some personal news from my side of things here. As you know, I am one of the Republicans that has been part of the Lincoln Project for this past year, and it's been a struggle for me. It's been a long haul. I spent the last 5 years, frankly, since it first became clear that the Republican Party was actually taking Donald Trump seriously as a candidate for president, that I have struggled with trying to make sense of where I thought our party was and who I thought we were as a party, with the idea that they could also at the same time embrace Donald Trump. His misogyny, his racism, his cruelty, his total lack of intellectual curiosity, his emotional instability. I mean, go down the list. And each year that has passed since then, it has become more and more difficult for me. Not because Donald Trump is so much worse. Donald Trump is exactly who we knew he was, right? He's behaved exactly the way that we could have guessed. At his heart, at his core, he is a weak and cowardly man who we should have been able to hold in check and to push back and to not allow to become so destructive. And that's where I lost it with the party, because it's become clear to me that the party leaders, the Mitch McConnells of the world, the Ronna Romney McDaniels and Kevin McCarthy's, and chairs across the country, and 126 Republican members of Congress, they don't want to hold him in check. They haven't just been quiet for 4 years thinking that we could put him behind us. They've embraced it. They have embraced Trumpism. Even though he lost, we spent the last 4 weeks watching as the Republican leaders in this party have launched an unprecedented assault on democracy, trying to overturn the results of a legitimate election, trying to unseat a legitimate government in the United States of America. And it has become clear to me that in spite of the fact that Trump lost, the Republican Party is planning to continue to be the party of Trump. They're building their ambitions and their aspirations for future success on Trumpism, on the cruelty, on the misogyny, on the racism, on the destructiveness. And it has become clear to me in my own heart, my own head, there is no hope for the future. There is no hope for the Republican Party as we look to the future. I can no longer identify with this party. I can no longer defend it as if somehow our past principles are going to become our future principles. It's clear that that's not going to happen. And this morning, I went down to town hall and filled out the paperwork and rescinded my registration as a Republican, and have now become what we call in our state unenrolled, an independent voter. I wrote about it in USA Today. You can see it on their website today. Probably what has most moved me to finally take this step is that when we look at Abraham Lincoln, the founder of the Republican Party, and the sacrifices that he made trying to advance the idea of a constitutional, free, equal society for everyone in America, and then to compare that to today's Republican Party, where there is no comparison. Lincoln understood that slavery in the United States of America could not coexist. And I have come to the understanding that today's Trump Republican Party cannot coexist with the highest ideals of our country, the American ideal, the promise that is America. And so I've made that decision. I didn't do it lightly. It was difficult for a lot of different reasons. But I want to thank everybody who's been part of the Lincoln Project for this last year, who have encouraged and reassured me that as a nation, as a people, we can work together in spite of our partisan differences, in spite of those political areas where we might have disagreements. We can still come together, solve problems, and make tomorrow a better day for our country. So that's what I remain committed to here at the Lincoln Project, as well as in all other avenues of my life. And I'm so happy that we have some of the Lincoln Project's smartest minds with us. And I always have to be careful when I try to say nice things when I introduce people, because I know there's other people listening who's saying, hey, wait, I thought I was one of the smartest minds. Let's start with our guest host today. He's one of our senior advisors here at the Lincoln Project. He also wrote, he has a new book out, and I'm not finding it in my notes. So you're going to have to tell us when you come on with us here. We're really happy. There it is, Our Own Worst Enemy. He is a national security expert and a senior advisor for the Lincoln Project, Tom Nichols. Tom, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's great to be with you, Jennifer, and welcome to the vast ranks of the unenrolled and independent unregistered voters. I took the same step myself, so I know what you went through, and I know it wasn't easy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it is a growing community. It is a growing demographic of American voters for sure. And so that we don't waste any time, let's get our first guest right in with us, Tom. He is one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project and the master of the ship, I have to say. He is one of the brilliant, or perhaps evil, depending on how you think about it, masterminds who came up with this whole idea to begin with. Reed Galen. Reed, it's great to have you. How are you?
I'm well. With an introduction like that, how can I go wrong? I got no place to go but up. No, let me say, just Jennifer, I too, look, I am now almost 5 years into being an independent. I left back in 2016 after Trump got the nomination. But I understand, I grew up an operatives kid on Capitol Hill. For me, politics was always as much a business as it was anything. But I understand, where the journey you take was so much different and so much more personal. Just given that, as someone who worked within a state party, who worked their way up to being elected as chair of that party, the relationships that you have, and especially in a place like New Hampshire, with every town and hamlet, that everybody involved. I totally understand. The wrenching nature of that. And certainly, we, as Tom said, could not be more happy to welcome you to the independent swimming pool, as I hope you'll find the water is fine. And I totally agree with you that I think that there are more people who probably consider themselves independent now than maybe ever has been, regardless of what letter they still have behind their name. So, I think it's been incredible that a year ago, we had this idea, right? We launched this thing in the New York Times op-ed, an op-ed in the New York Times with George and John and Steve and Rick and Mike and Ron and everybody else. And, here we are now a year later. I don't think that, certainly I didn't, think that we were going to have, the level of success that we have. And as I think you noted, could not be more humbled and proud by all of the folks, literally millions of people who have joined us in this. And I was on the phone with some folks, some supporters earlier today, who said, well, I feel a little weird saying we, but I feel like it's really we. And I said, you're absolutely right. And I think that's been one of the things that I've loved more than anything about this whole thing, is that whether or not it's volunteers, folks who sign up for our email stuff, people that tune into your show, people who've given us money, there's this really collective atmosphere that we're all in this together. And so I think as we start year 2 here, I think we've got a lot of work left to do, but could not be proud enough to take at least a peek back in the last 365 days.
Well, you know what? We can't deny that what happened over the last 365 days is genuinely extraordinary in the world of politics, in the history of our country, that people from a particular party came together to unseat an incumbent president from that same party. I don't know. I can't think of a time when that was, a significant part of a presidential cycle, a presidential election. I don't think that we can claim credit for the fact that Trump has lost, has been unseated, but I think that we can claim that we played a significant role in that, certainly.
Sure.
So Trump is going to be gone. January 20th is going to come. He's going to be gone. One of the things that we said at the beginning of all this, Reed, is that our commitment was to defeat Trump and Trumpism at the ballot box. So Trumpism is clearly alive and well in the Republican Party. So how does that, where do we as the Lincoln Project go from here? What does the next 365 days look like for us?
Well, first and foremost, you're right. I think that, as Election Day started 6 weeks ago, I think that we thought that, at least I don't want to say we, I'll speak for myself here, was really hoping for that blue wave, not necessarily because of all the policy implications, but frankly, because of the repudiation that it would show. And so I don't think anybody was, more guilty of irrational exuberance than I was. But I do think the first place we have to start is, why did, let's call it roughly 75 million people, decide that Donald Trump was a better option than Joe Biden, despite so many objective pieces of evidence to the contrary? I said, we have an op-ed today in the Washington Post that goes into this. Maybe it's a third who are the true MAGA folks, right? That they're going to be part of who he is forever. Maybe another third really did, have some serious concerns about, the defund the police stuff and the socialism stuff that, was very, very potent for Trump and the Republicans. And then maybe there's another 25%, as Stuart Stevens, another one of our partners in crimes, like to say, that I'm a Republican, Trump's a Republican, so that's who I vote for. And so I think we have to really understand what it is that means. And, Tom's far more of a historian than I could ever hope to be. But we were on the phone the other day with a guy who said, what's concerning is that from his perspective, the person we were talking to, was that, this sort of proto-fascism, proto-authoritarianism appeared to be a lot more likely a path that the country could go down than any real, socialism ever could be, just because the country's just not wired for it. And so I think we have a lot of work to do on understanding where we are, understanding that, Trump very well might run for re-election or announce a re-election campaign on January 20th, which I think is probably just a means of, keeping himself in the center of something and, living his life off other people's money, as he's done for 70-some years. But it will hold the party in place for some amount of time. Ronna McDaniel's likely to be reelected to a third term at the RNC, which is going to give them enormous resources, as you know, at both the federal and state level, and resources as well, keeping all those people in the state parties, under their thumb. And so even if Trump decides ultimately not to run, because I don't think he really liked the job to begin with, clearly he didn't have any interest in doing it, that, it's going to hold a lot of Republicans in place, because, there's a lot more safety in that big fat shadow of his than there will be coming outside of it.
Yeah, Reed, one of the things that strikes me is that at a moment like this, where, as you point out, suddenly we're at a historical crossroads where something we didn't think was possible, right? The movement of the United States toward some kind of authoritarianism is really staring us in the face. And that requires everybody to think seriously about how we got here. It seems to me the sign of a confident political movement is also to be willing to own some mistakes, to be introspective.
Sure.
The success of the Lincoln Project over a year was remarkable. But if you had to look back as one of the founders, is there anything we could have done better? Are there any missteps? Is there anything you'd take back? Because that stock taking, I mean, the battle against Trumpism is going to go on for a while. That stock taking, I think, is part of the next step of the fight to say, we got this far, we got rid of Trump, the fight's not over.
Sure.
But what's the lessons learned? I mean, we know a lot of the things we did right. Is there anything we did wrong?
I think that some of the mistakes we made were, I would say most of the mistakes we made, let's say operationally, were made born, and Jennifer can attest to this, having been there at the dawn of this, was that once we hit that sort of first week of May, once Trump attacked us, we took off so fast, like a rocket, headed for orbit, that it was really like, how can we get this done? What's the objective? Go do it, go do it, go do it. And we got into this incredibly, efficient rhythm of contact, with what Jennifer and her team did with Republicans and independents for Biden. And so there wasn't a lot of looking back and saying, okay, what can we do, or what should we do better? I don't think that, and I'll speak for myself here, I don't think that we took the defund the police stuff that I mentioned, the socialism stuff that I mentioned, as seriously as we probably should have. I don't think that, certainly, and some of our political team can speak to this as well, I don't think that we understood probably that, for non-college educated men, I think it's becoming, I don't want to say less important, but maybe less impactful, whether or not that means you're a white man, a black man, a Latino man, that maybe some of this stuff is really becoming far more socioeconomic than it is demographic or racial in nature. And then I think also, just trying to have figured out, and I don't know that if anybody else didn't do it, we couldn't have, how we could have really had a better sense of where these Senate races were. We felt really good about places like Alaska, felt really good about places like Maine. We knew the rest would be dogfights because they were close, but you take a guy like Al Gross in Alaska, we felt like that he was really close. We felt like that. And then, he loses by, 10 or 20 points, whatever it is in the aftermath. And that's not close. That wasn't the outcome we were expecting. And, you can say, well, maybe some of this stuff had an impact in a place like North Carolina or a place like South Carolina, but it's Alaska. And Dan Sullivan,
is this a place where
Dan Sullivan's a bowl of vanilla ice cream? Like, he didn't bring much to the table.
Is this a place where we need to kind of link arms with the Democrats and jointly look back and say, everybody needs to look back to think about what they did in 2020?
I think so, but I think that it has to be honest. I mean, I think if as Jennifer can attest, one of the things that we have done from the get-go and will continue to do is that we are, our actions, our activities, our positions are rooted in honesty and fact. And I don't think we're going to change that. In fact, I think that a lot of the folks probably tuning in right now, if we started to try and stretch the truth or twist arguments or find facts and figures to fit an argument rather than making the argument based on principle, they wouldn't have come in the first place. So I think that's important. But I think that, being willing to say, here's what we did, Tom, to your question, and why we shouldn't do these again. And then also understanding too, that the coalition that we were a part of that helped elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris was a very unique thing and of its time. There's going to be a coalition in 22 that's different. Another one that's in 24 that's going to be different. And we have to look outward and say, who are the groups that we want to, partner with? If we agree, if there are three things that you can argue about, we agree on two of them. Why don't we work on the two things and not look for purity, in one another in the one thing we don't agree on? So I think that, as Jennifer and I, when we were at the Cooper Union in February, 160th anniversary of Lincoln's Right Makes Might speech, we were, that was a time right before COVID hit when we were all really looking to be aspirational. And then COVID hit and we sort of got into the street fighting business. But I think that the House of American Democracy is pretty run down. I think it needs a bigger door. It needs bigger windows. It needs more sunlight. And I think that's across the board, regardless of where you find yourself, Republican, Democrat, or otherwise. And so I think that, if we are true to our values, which are the foundational principles of American democracy, there'll be plenty of time for all of us to argue about policy when the time comes. Right. The truth, right. And I'll say this and I'll stop talking, is that, when President Biden and Vice President Harris take office, it's going to be COVID here, COVID there, COVID everywhere. And until and unless we can get that under control, no one's going back to school, no one's going back to work. And I can't imagine any big omnibus piece of legislation, regardless of the topic, is going to go anywhere, because it's just not what folks are worried about.
Yeah, you know what? I think your point about COVID is probably the most important one of everything you just said. That COVID, as you know, Reed, was the single most influential issue in this election in moving the needle on the at the presidential level. And it was fascinating to me as well to see how that did not translate down ballot, how that did not translate to the Senate. And, some of the other issues that you talked about that, we sort of underestimated in another direction. But we always knew from the beginning, and we said this from day one, that Trumpism was, that was a different beast than just Trump himself. And so that fight continues, that's going to continue on. Reed, we've got a ton of questions for you from our audience. So we want to make sure that we take advantage of these. This
is why I stay behind the curtain all this time.
Yeah, no, we have a really smart, really engaged, really patriotic audience. I think you're going to enjoy these questions.
And thank God for
let's bring up the first one. So Reed, from Marianne, congrats on this 1-year anniversary. In one of your podcast roundtables, you discussed civics education, battling disinformation, and closing loopholes in government. Please talk about what the Lincoln Project and your supporters will do on those fronts on an ongoing basis.
Sure, and thank you, Marlene. I think there are a number of things that we want to do, and the thing about where we are now, I think that you both can agree on, we can all agree on, is that we are not in a normal place for a super PAC to be, right? Most super PACs, they're active, and then they take their 9 or 10 months off and they go into hibernation and they shed staff and they do what they're going to do. And then they get ready for the next election cycle. They start doing their research and they raise their money, and there they are back in business. I think that we take a different view of the opportunity that we're presented here. And it is an opportunity. And so, on the civics education front, I think it's, and Tom is, an expert in what people know and what they don't know, and probably in many ways what they need to know. But how should we ask Americans to consistently put the election, the republic on the line, election after election, when we provide no underpinning or understanding of exactly how the system works or why it works the way it does? We're basically just asking people to make, very uninformed decisions with pretty bad choices, typically, regardless of what the office is. And so I think that, we want to work with allied groups, that are already in this space to make sure that, civics education is something that we can not only create content against, which I think we'd be good at. If we could be the folks who created how a bill becomes a law, or I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill for the 21st century, like, nothing would make me prouder, especially my days watching ABC cartoons as a kid. On the misinformation, disinformation.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is there a place for the Lincoln Project to become a kind of a sharper, funnier version of Schoolhouse Rock? Because half of the country cannot name all 3 branches of government. Even more unsettling, if you ask people, should we repeal Obamacare, or should we keep the Affordable Care Act? 35% of Americans don't know that those are the same thing.
Sure.
And I don't know how you conduct policy in a country like that. What can the Lincoln Project do to try to dent that?
Well, the one thing that I think...
And let me also say that, Reed, we need Schoolhouse Rocks for adults. That's we can't go back and just start with the kids who are in middle school. We can't afford to have, this generation of adults from age 24 to 80 continue forward without more information.
No, well, I think that's right. But I think, Jennifer, what you do and what Rick and Tara do on the breakdown, I think the one thing is you can say that we get anecdotally is that folks feel like that we explain things in a way that doesn't condescend to them, and makes them feel better about the fact that there are folks who are willing to sit down and take the time to do that. So I think we will continue to do that in formats like this. And I think that the condescension piece is important. That if people feel like you're trying to, while you're educating them, you're trying to point out how stupid they are because they don't know it in the first place, probably not going to listen to you, right? So I think it's important to do that. And then, frankly, it's got to be entertaining. Like, why can I repeat? I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill because it was catchy and it was fun, right? It had those mnemonic devices that stick in my brain, from 30 years ago. So I think that's one. But I think also, as the second part of the question about the misinformation and disinformation piece, look, it's everywhere, right? It's OANN, it's Bannon, it's Trump, obviously himself.
Right.
Newsmax, which is now sort of surging. Fox is doing it because they're trying to compete against Newsmax now. Every bit of ugliness that comes out of the sewer pipe that is Facebook, it's just, we're awash in it. And I think that we have to do, and I think we have an opportunity to be people who can tactically go after these folks with things like our Troll Stomper efforts, which is, I think we've already recruited and trained thousands of people to recognize misinformation and disinformation when they see it and flag it appropriately. But I think also, to expand outlets like this and offerings like this that is giving folks sort of the straight dope about what's going on, without favor to, one quote side or another, but really what it means for them. And I think, as you know, Jennifer, as someone who participated in politics at the truly, personal level, if you can't get someone to understand why it means something to them, then it really doesn't matter. Right. And so I think there's that piece. And then the last piece I would say is that, Fox, in the right wing, and MSNBC, like they're more about scaring the hell out of the people that watch them on any given day than they are informing them about what's going on. And I think that's the other part too, is that when, the things that we do as the Lincoln Project is, and the thing that I've been proudest of what you guys have all built across our different content channels, is that when we have folks on, we have the best people, right? Like we don't have talking heads on so that they can repeat some rote BS talking points. We have experts who know how this stuff works. And I think that that's important because I think folks are looking for, people who know their stuff. I mean, Tom is an expert in something. At least he writes books about being an expert in something. I'm not sure what it is. But I'm just teasing, of course.
But that leads to an important question, because you just raised something, and I know that people raise this with the Lincoln Project guys on occasion because, our ads throw some really hard punches, which is one of the things that I think are great about them. But this the fine line between educating and being aggressive and in your face and being condescending, how do you strike that balance? I know, I get accused of this all the time because I'm me. But it is a difficult problem when someone says, well, I think there are 50,000 Chinese troops in Maine. There is a hard balance to strike between, I don't want to be condescending, but that's crazy. How does let me rephrase this as, how did the Lincoln Project manage to hit that sweet spot so many times between kind of telling people they were misinformed while making them laugh, sometimes making them cringe? And how do we keep that going forward? Because I'm not sure that ads that are just sort of, violins and chamber music with images of the Constitution, we know in the past those don't get anywhere. You have to kind of grab people by the lapels a little bit and say, wait a minute, you really need to know that where North Korea is. And so, how did we do it in the past? And especially, of course, Donald Trump was an easy target. How do we do it on more complex things in the future and walk that line?
That's thank you, because I think that's the one thing is, we are known for the sort of rip your face off ads. And those were ones that we really enjoyed making against Donald Trump. And we will continue to make those simply so that he can watch Fox News in Palm Beach County and see us every night. But I would say this is that if you look at some of the aspirational stuff we did about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or what the election meant for the country, the stuff that was aspirational, that it was, truly tugged at the heartstrings, I think that was the best work we did, frankly. I think that truly moved people in a way where anger and toughness does have its place. There's no question about it, right? Politics is a full contact sport. But we're, in some ways trying to capture hearts and minds. And so I think that getting in folks' faces is less important than sometimes getting inside their hearts and their heads. And so I think understanding how it is that we're emotive and evocative is really how we've done this, and I think have been successful. Again, regardless of what the ultimate end was, and I think we'll continue to do that. Trump will be there. Look, when the Marco Rubios of the world come around, like they're going to get the treatment, right? That's what they get, and whether or not that's condescension, whether or not that's diminishment, whether or not that's scorn or mockery, whatever it is, sometimes he's going to get his thing. But I think let's say that Joe Biden and the U.S. House decide that we need an updated Voting Rights Act. Okay, I could agree with that, right? Especially given what the High Court did back in 2013, sort of ripping the heart out of the current one. We're not going to convince people to do that because it's the right thing to do. That we'll tell them, here's what it means, and I believe that they will come around to the right way of thinking. And then we will apply pressure to people like Mitch McConnell, who probably have no interest whatsoever in moving legislation like that. And we will do it in the unique way that we do things, which is, Mitch McConnell doesn't care about his voters. And he doesn't care, I think, really about the American people writ large, no matter what he might say. What are the two things Mitch McConnell cares about? Power and money. Okay. How do you threaten his money and diminish his power? I don't know exactly what the answers are yet, but I have some things in mind. And so I think that's the way we'll go about things. And I think the other part, too, that was so great about what we've done in the last year is you see that we have this bullhorn now where I know it sounds almost old fashioned, but we can ask folks and they will oblige us with true calls to civic action. And so I think that, folks are waking up. I think it's probably been, I don't know, probably since I was, a kid, maybe in college, that there was really an activist civic movement on behalf of the country, not just of red or blue or Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, Reed, I've said this many times before. I think that one of the reasons that the Lincoln Project was as successful as we were in the past year is because we were honest. And sometimes the bare naked truth can be uncomfortable to look at. But I think that there has been a yearning amongst the American people for a political lane or a political organization that just tells them the truth and can be a voice for them outside of that, that ugliness that partisanship has become in this country. And looking ahead, I mean, I think the void continues, is there waiting to be filled. And I look forward to the idea of the Lincoln Project being able to be that voice to your point, for things like civics education, things like a new voter rights act, addressing some of these, really powerful, high level American ideal issues that everybody from either side of center should be able to come to and find some agreement on as we move forward. I know that you have other places to be, Reed. I'm really glad that you were able to be with us today. And we're going to have you back next year. Can you believe we're already at that point where we're talking about next year?
I know.
We're going to have you back because there's a lot more for us to talk about.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for everything in the last year and for doing such a great job here. And Tom, always great to see you. Don't see you enough, and I hope sometime this coming summer, when we've all gotten a needle in the arm, we can finally see each other again in person. So, thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks, Reed. Take care. So, Reed Galen, one of the co-founders here at the Lincoln Project. Tom, I think everybody, you would see it the same as I do out on social media, 1,000,000 times a day. What's next with the Lincoln Project? Where are you going next? What's going to happen next? And for me, it goes back to the beginning. We said on day one that we were here to defeat Donald Trump and Trumpism. And if the Republican Party has shown us anything in these last 4 years, these last 4 weeks, it's that Trumpism, it's not only that Trumpism is not dead, but that they are dedicated to nurturing it, keeping it alive, and allowing it to grow through the Republican Party, bigger and stronger and more influential than ever, even without Donald Trump.
I think our colleague Tara Suttonler had a great line for this. She said, I'm no longer a Republican. I'm part of a large pro-democracy movement.
Right.
And that's how I feel. And, it's strange. I've spent my entire life studying places like the Soviet Union and Russia and authoritarian regimes. I never felt like I really had to fight for my own rights. I never felt like my own rights were in danger.
Right.
And this is the first time in my life where I've really felt like the Constitution is in danger. And I think that the Republican Party has institutionally literally become a danger to the Constitution and to the Bill of Rights. And so to me, this transcends politics and policy. As you said at the very outset,
Right.
this isn't about one policy argument or the other. This is about the framework within which we all live and agree to coexist as political um, competitors, as fellow citizens, as people who argue things out in a liberal democracy. It really is a remarkable moment in history, and I'm kind of sorry that we came to it, but it does require us to think of ourselves as part of something bigger.
Well, and it's a reminder that we can't take anything for granted. I spent a little bit of time in Russia and Ukraine and Belarus as part of a humanitarian effort many years ago. And when we talk about third-rate banana republics or authoritarian regimes and the corruption that comes with us, and the way that they simply suffocate out any opportunity for democracy to grow, I think when people have not seen it or experienced it or had some sort of connection to it, it becomes really easy to just assume that the United States of America is always going to be what our founders envisioned it to be, or that it will always be what we thought it was when we were children, when we were growing up. And when we take our eye off the ball, Donald Trump is what happens. So if there's an optimism to come out of this, if there's something positive to look at this out of this as we go forward, it's that I do think that a large number of the American people have kind of woken up and been reminded that we, the people, have a responsibility in all of this to be engaged, to protect, to preserve, to defend. And that's what I think the Lincoln Project is going to be primarily focused on going forward, that preservation of democracy. And I've said this 100 times on the air. We are neither pro or anti-Republican Party or Democratic Party. We are pro-democracy, and that's where our commitment and our efforts are going to remain. We're going to take a quick break, Tom. And when we come back, I'm very happy to tell you that our Lincoln Project Senior Advisor, Susan Del Percio, will be joining us. But first, we have this for you from the Lincoln Project.
On November 3rd, 2020, Donald Trump was defeated by Joe Biden. On December 14th, the Electoral College voted. But the battle is just beginning. Today in America, there is the most dangerous anti-democratic tide since the Civil War. Too many Republicans who call themselves conservatives are autocrats. They care about nothing but power. These Republicans may be American by accident of birth, but are unworthy of the greatness of America. They lead an emerging authoritarian movement that must be defeated. They follow the flag of Trumpism, not the American flag. This fight will last for many years, and we will fight for American democracy against its enemies. Democracy must win, or there will be no more debates about issues in this country. This is an American fight. We will never compromise with extremists, the racists, the violent thugs of Trumpism. We seek common cause with defenders of freedom everywhere. We fight for the right to peacefully disagree with each other as good and decent Americans unite to defend our country. We will win. They will lose. Our fight is just beginning. Join us.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The Senate can be all-consuming. It's not our only colleagues, but their spouses and loved ones that all get folded into the extended family.
Oh, Mitch. Where were those tears when Georgians mourned their loved ones lost to COVID-19? And where were those tears when Georgians lost their jobs and struggled to put food on the tables for their families? While Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue cashed in on secret COVID briefings. If only they had that money from the government you held up over partisan politics in solidarity with a gutless, heartless, corrupt, soon-to-be ex-president. Oh, Mitch. After all these years of cold-hearted, bigoted, sanctimonious behavior, could it be that you actually have a heart? What a shame you only show it for your fellow Republican cronies on the way out the door. and not for Americans who are hurting.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And welcome back to Vote for America on LPTV. I'm so happy to have our next guest with us. You've met her through us many times already. She's a senior advisor here at the Lincoln Project, as well as a longtime political strategist. Very happy to have with us Susan Del Percio. Susan, how are you? Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's great to be with you. It's like we do this every week now. The three of us get together and have a little chat. Love that.
I like it. I like it. This works for me. I think the more we have Lincoln Project people on, I like it. I like the energy. I like our ability to share information. This works for me. So Susan, let's jump right into things. We've been talking a little bit about the fact, Tom left the Republican Party in 2018. I just officially renounced my registration today. And have registered as an independent. And one of the things that really pushed me over the line was this open embrace of an anti-democracy movement, is the only way I can think of it, in the last 4 weeks, trying to overturn the results of a legitimate election, which we know in any democracy, the United States of America especially, our free and fair elections are the cornerstone upon which our country is built. And to see leaders of my party, a party that I really believed in for so long, make this strategic choice to embrace something that we are unaccustomed to seeing anywhere other than a third-rate banana republic, really unsettled me, really kind of shook me to my core. It made me realize that all the things that I've had a problem with the party over these past years, where I thought once Trump was gone, maybe we could get back to something valuable and principled. And it made me realize that today's party leaders don't want that. They don't want to go back to what I see as a principled past, for our party. What do you see? Like, is this anti-democracy mentality? Is that the future for the party? Is that the strategy for Republicans going forward? That we're gonna depend on the votes from the people who don't like democracy?
Yeah, Jennifer, I understand why you left the party, and congratulations and kudos to you for having the strength to do so. I'm still in the party, and what's kind of kept me in the party, believe it or not, is I've spoken to so many college students and so many good government kind of organizations, and all of these Republicans who say, thank you for not abandoning the party, because I'm against Trump. I get where you're coming. Please don't leave us just yet, because you're a voice for it. But it's interesting because you said the word, like, you watch the leaders of the Republican Party. These people that we're watching in Congress, those 126 members of Congress, they're not leaders, they're followers. They're not paving the way for where we're going forward. They just know how to follow the past, and the past is Donald Trump. And I've really started to think about this a lot. I have been as committed to beating Donald Trump and Trumpism and the Trump enablers as anybody. Yeah. And I will continue to hold them accountable. But I wonder, if we keep calling it Trumpism, are we not feeding the beast? Are there, there's of those 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump, maybe 25 are like those anti-democracy and basically just cult followers. But I think if you asked a lot of those 75 million, maybe the 50 million others, they believe in democracy. They're not anti-democracy. Some of them are decent people. We've talked about this so many times. And I think we have to figure out a way, because I hear all of the problems. All I hear is people telling me the problems with the party, the problems with the party. We have to be working how to find solutions to govern. Because while we could be an independent group of objectors, we can call for public support, but we're still in a two-party system. And until we do challenges and primaries, et cetera, what are we going to be able to change?
But let's think about that for a minute, because I hear you 100%. You and I have said this many times. This is a complex question. I don't believe for a moment that every person who identifies as a Republican or who voted for Donald Trump is a racist or a bigot or a hateful person or somebody who embraces the idea of putting children in cages. I don't believe that for a minute. But I look at the party. The party is the people who are elected when it comes to the structure, the leadership. When I was chairman in New Hampshire, I always said the party is you. The party is the thousands or millions of people out there who are advocating for principles and showing up to vote for those principles and those values that we talk about. So, and I still believe that, to your point, I agree with you. It's probably 25 million versus 50 million. What is the Republican Party offering those 50 million people right now? If Mitch McConnell and Ronna Romney McDaniel and let's think about people who are talking about running for president someday, and Tom Cotton and Nikki Haley and some of the other folks down there, what are they offering those 50 million people who say I'm a Republican but this isn't me, that they can hang their hat on? Because I've reached a point where I just don't see it.
And I get it, but I'd love to go back to what you just mentioned about when you were chair of the New Hampshire party. Because the one thing that Donald Trump did do well, or his campaign, I should say, is early on, like the minute he was after inauguration, they started going after the state parties and putting their people in.
Right.
They controlled those
absolutely.
parties. They moved faster than any operation I have ever seen take power ever in those state parties to make sure there wasn't room for a primary. Not that there would have been a successful one, but there wouldn't have been any leadership to even voice an opinion. And so the question is, in some of these state parties, are people going to challenge them? I think the challenge starts on the ground level. And those 50 million people going to their state party saying, no, this is not right. And also, again, with Trump, he's gone. So what are these people really going to believe in? Because Donald Trump wasn't a Republican. He didn't have any Republican principles. He was just someone who used the party line as a means to become president. So there are principled Republicans that could look for alternatives, because guess what? Donald Trump's not going to be in office. And I think the more we feed the idea of fighting Trumpism and mentioning it as that, I'd rather say I'm fighting for democracy, or I'm fighting against those people who vote against democracy. I'll do that. But I don't want to say the words Donald Trump and Trumpism.
Right. So, and I agree.
Sorry, guys.
We're still on this question of putting the party. This is going to sound like a classic straddle, but let me agree with you while challenging you at the same time. I love that notion that there are young people with a lot of energy who say, look, I'm going to get involved in the party and I'm going to change this. And, this is why I argued for defeating the Republicans' root and branch, so that younger Republicans could then run in primaries without the dead weight of all of these, let's not call them trumpet, let's just call them, I don't know, people interested in white minority rule, people interested in power for power's sake, whatever it is that they were doing, people who are there from inertia. But I also feel like those of us that were associated with the Republican Party for a long time have to walk away from it so that our membership, our presence isn't providing top cover to the current institutional GOP. And also, I think this is going to sound strange, but I also think it's important to take ourselves out of the equation so that what's left of the Republican Party can stop arguing with us and has to argue with those young people who can say, you're not arguing with, with Jennifer Horn, who, was chairing the party 20 years ago. You're not arguing with Tom Nichols, who worked for a Republican 30 years ago. This is us. We're here now. If you want a new Republican Party, this is the only one you're going to get. And I think somehow exiting the party, at least for a lot of maybe a national thing, kind of had to be done. After the kind of the offensive anti-constitutional nature of the party just got too much for those of us that were in it so long.
And I get that, Tom, and I agree and disagree with myself every day. It's a challenge. I mean, I can fight with myself. I can look this way, I can look this way and see two different things. So I get it. But, I'm also in a slightly different position, for example, than you are, or even Jennifer. I do primaries. I help people run for office. if people like me aren't around to support other Republicans who not only want to, it's not so much changing the party, they just want to get it back to what the actual principles. They just want to move, kind of remove the last 4 years. But if there aren't some people to help them along and support their commitment, that makes it a lot more difficult. And again, you have to be careful. Like, I can only change it I could do my part within. I can't do that outside of the party. And that's not to mean for a second that I won't wake up tomorrow morning and pen an op-ed and say I'm leaving, because I have that urge every single day.
I'm fully aware. I am fully aware of the problem that I'm fully aware of the problem. It's easy for a 10-year-old crank in the woods to sort them out. We
were on a call together. Yeah, Tom, we were on a call together earlier this week, and we heard someone talking about, well, here's another problem. And they were offering identifying the problems. I can identify a million problems. I need to find solutions. I'm a practicing consultant. It's what I do. I want to figure this out. Am I right or wrong? I don't know. You can ask 100 people and get 200 different answers as far as I'm concerned. But this is what this is what keeps me in for right this second.
Right. And I totally understand that idea of going to bed at night saying, that's it, tomorrow's I'm out. And then waking up the next day and thinking, I got to stay because I see it on social media, directed at me, directed at other people in the Lincoln Project. I'm getting some of it today saying, oh, sure, now you can't, now you're walking away. Kids in cages wasn't bad enough. This other thing wasn't bad enough. And that's what I think some people don't understand is, no, those things were horrible. We spoke out against those things. We fought against those things. For me, it's been a struggle of where am I going to be more effective? Because I've spent the last 5 years trying to fight against those things from inside the party, trying to make the party, trying to, encourage the party, inspire the party to hold itself accountable to the highest ideals of us as Republicans, as the party of Lincoln, and believing, to your point, Susan, I have young, my children are all in their 20s and 30s, they're young adults who are going out in the world and trying to figure out where they belong on the political spectrum, among a lot of other things. And I want to make sure that that they and their generation are empowered as well. But I came to a point where I just realized, and this is sort of to Tom's point, I guess, that I was not being at all effective inside the party anymore. And it's not that I've been silent. Nobody who knows me would ever suggest that, I'm silent in any way. But I certainly disregarded, that there just isn't an audience for that message anymore. And I wonder if I can't be more effective outside the party, whether I'm talking to young people or folks like myself who embrace certain principles but don't see the fight for that in the Republican Party anymore. But here's my question. I'll give it to both of you. Whoever starts first gets to answer it first. I think that part of the issue is the party system itself. That we need to move to a place in this country where even if you are registered in a party, and frankly, I'd like to see a movement toward leaving party registration, at least for a while, so that we force Republicans and Democrats to come back to the center and earn our vote and earn our support. But how do you, and I guess that's kind of the question right there, how do we fix the party problem, the problem with parties themselves, where people are feeling an allegiance to a party over a principle or over a country? How do we fix that problem? And how do we fix it if we're still inside the party? I don't see how we can address that unless we step outside.
Yeah, I was going to do that whole beep for the Family Feud. I'll put in this answer, and if Tom, you have a higher rated one, you take the board.
There you go.
But I think at this point,
good answer.
Good answer.
But if we're going to get there, that's a whole separate problem and requires a whole separate solution. And so you need the version of the Lincoln Project to take that on, and that's it. Now, if you want to talk about creating a third party, that also starts or even a fourth or a fifth, that starts at the grassroots level. That takes a big commitment. And when I say a big commitment, I mean a 20-year commitment. This is not easy when you have to do the nuts and bolts of it.
You're right.
But you have to be well funded. You have to get the grassroots. You've got to convince people. And it is very, very difficult, especially since it becomes a ripe opening for someone with a whole lot of money to then control it because they could step in.
But you know what I'm hearing from
And
all
to
of
be
us
clear,
is
I'm not
anguish.
advocating for a third party.
Okay.
Well, we're
I
all unified
misunderstood the
in
question
anguish
then.
here
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
because the three of us still believe in things, and we're dealing with a Republican Party, the husk of a Republican Party that believes in nothing. And so we're trying to think of where is there a vehicle for our ideas, and to show how completely suspended in anguish I am between both of your positions. I came back to the Republican Party to fight Donald Trump because I felt, as Susan did, in 2012, I called it my trial separation. I was so appalled by South Carolina and the primary and the let him die stuff and Newt Gingrich. I was like, could I be in a party that takes Newt Gingrich that seriously? And I sort of just, I had always been a squishy ticket splitter my entire life. And I just said, okay, I'm not going to register as anything. But in my heart, I was a Republican. I wanted conservative candidates to win. I wanted Republicans to control the government. I wanted a Republican candidate to win for president before Donald Trump. I came back into the party exactly on Susan's notion that you have to, I said, hey, I worked in the Senate. I've been a Republican activist. I spent 33 years in this party. I'm going to fight for it at the last minute. When Susan Collins came out and shook her finger at us about not, about listening to the Senate and the very important people in it when they talk, and gave us that unbelievably insulting Sunday school lecture about Brett Kavanaugh, that was the day that I said, there is no moderate. There's nothing left in this party but a love of power and of privilege and perks. And that's when I was out. So that's the problem is I agree with everybody on this panel that we need to stay and we need to go at the same time. And I think, I don't know how to square
Project is. But that's what the Lincoln Project is in a way, isn't it? That this an avenue or a lane, a vehicle for all those people. I don't. If you're still in the Republican Party and you're listening to us and something rings true to you, join us. If you're a Democrat and you're listening, to what we're saying and something rings true, join us. Like we are about preserving democracy, which is something that should be the bridge, I guess, that joins the two parties, right? The two major parties.
If you're not going to have a third party, if you're not going to have another party, you're only going to have the Democrats and the Republicans. So you're going to stay divided. And listen, I am willing to speak against my party, which is also, by the way, one of the reasons I stay in, because my voice as a current Republican objector, I get to voice that opinion. I get more play on TV and radio and op-eds and everything to voice my opinion because I am still in and fighting it. But I agree so much on the common sense and bringing people back to the center, but that governance issue is going to be hard. And that's what brings us back at the end of the day, kind of where you started the show on COVID and everything else. Like Reed said, it's going to be COVID, COVID, COVID. If we could see government working and people working together, then that starts to open minds, that government is able to do things for all of us, not some of us.
And I look at it and say, I'm not looking for a third party. I think that that both of these parties, and we said this 100 times, we focus on the Republican Party all the time because that's where this came from, right? Donald Trump and their both parties are broken. Both parties have this extreme element that they give too much credibility and too much airtime to. Both parties have become so tribal and divided that they're hurting the country, in one way or another. And that's why I feel like as an independent, I would like to see more people become independents and let us stand in the middle of the road and say, you want us over there? Show me what you got. You want me over there? Show me what you got. prove to me that, and hopefully bring these people out of their extremities, out of their power grabs, out of their donor-led policies, and come back to the American people. If the American people leave the parties and are standing in, we're the ones standing in the center lane, let's force these guys to talk to us about the things that we care about that affect our families and our quality of life and our concerns about democracy. And maybe I'm just Pollyanna.
No, but in that case, you have to mandate. You would have to mandate people to vote, because otherwise you have the primary system. You can have 80%, but if 10% are just picking out the candidates, because that's the problem, is the candidates. So you need to force those independents, not you personally, but that's where you have to get the movement of that independent movement is to play in the primary. And that means they have to be registered in their parties.
In New Hampshire, independents can choose which primary to participate in.
They have to vote.
So, absolutely. Tom, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're raising a really interesting problem here, and it's one of the arguments, and Susan, this actually becomes a question for you, because one of the things that I think has to happen for the Republican Party to come back to any kind of health is that for a time, the Democratic Party has to become a governing party. It has to become some kind of a sane governing party that is capable. And, it's not been great at that, to be honest. I know people, Democrats will send me hate mail saying Barack Obama did a great job and, the blah, blah, blah. But, the coalition the Democrats have come into office with is a large coalition. And I think it's very difficult to be an honest critic of the Democrats, an honest and constructive critic of the Democrats, for anyone who is still in the institutional Republican Party, because it's an obvious conflict of interest. That raises of how can the Republicans who are still in, who are doing things like trying to help sane, principled Republicans run in primaries, return that two-party competition to the kind of competition between people who believe in the same system. Because right now, we have a Republican Party that simply does not believe in the Constitution of the United States. And so I think there's
is that I think there is an opportunity because of COVID to have a national patriotic response to getting this done, and a campaign similar to what we saw after 9/11, people joining to fight the virus. It's not a D or an R issue, but I'm sorry to be such a downer on this, but 2022 with the House so split, it will be a referendum on the president, like it is every midterm election. So the chances of the Republicans actually gaining control of the House is not crazy when you look at what happened in this election. It's just a matter of which Republicans are there.
So that's on you, Susan. So then that's on you, right?
Unless I wake up tomorrow, Jennifer, and I do what you do. Until tomorrow.
So, guys, we could obviously, amongst the three of us, continue to talk about this easily for another half an hour. And this is what I think our conversation is going to be going into the new year. We have a Democratic president who was elected with Republican votes, a Republican Party, who is somewhat in free fall at the moment, not sure, where they're going to go. And we need that Democratic president to step up above his party, to step outside of the party loyalty, the party, the partisanship, in order to really lead the country forward. It's going to be incredibly challenging, to the points that both of you have made. And I think the three of us will be back here on this show talking about it many more times. Susan, we have to go. Thank you so much for being with us. As always, it has been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
And Tom, happy holidays to you too. Thank you, Susan. And Tom, thank you so much for being here with me today. It has been delightful. And we should let everybody know, I think, for behind the scenes, as we were getting ready for the show, I found out that Tom not only has a lovely voice, but knows all the words to some of my favorite Christmas carols. So Tom, I think you need to do some kind of a Facebook Live and lead all of our Lincoln Project folks in some kind of a sing-along before Christmas hits us this year.
Lincoln Project karaoke is something that will have to happen. and we'll
Right.
just have to make it happen.
It will have to happen. No, not we. Not we, the. But thank you so much for being here, Tom. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
It was
Thank you. And to all of you, thank you so much for being with us today. As always, Reed Galen and Susan Del Percio and Tom Nichols, just a delightful day, at least for me. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And before we go, I just want to share something with you. It has been a little bit of a rough run for me. It's been a tough year for us personally and my family, and certainly this fight that we have taken on through the Lincoln Project has been a rough one at times. And I went out to get the mail the other day, and in my mailbox is this hand addressed envelope to the Lincoln Project. And I'll tell you, based on some of the emails and direct messages that I get on social media, I immediately kind of tensed up, worried about what was going to be in that envelope. And it was this lovely holiday card, a Happy New Year card that somebody in town put in my box, unsigned, saying, "Wish you and your loved ones peace, health, happiness, and prosperity in the coming year." And then in their handwriting here, "Thank you for helping our democracy." I can't tell you how sweet this is and how much that moved me. That's what this has been all about, is protecting the democracy, preserving democracy in America. And it could not happen without all of you. What we've accomplished just in our small efforts at the Lincoln Project has been led and fed by the support and the enthusiasm and the commitment of so many of you, not just watching this show, but have become part of this across America this year. And I just want you to know, whatever you celebrate, however you celebrate, this year we celebrate Christmas in our house. And it will not look like all of our past Christmases. It'll be a little bit smaller, but we will sing our songs, and we will pray the prayers. And we will be together one way or another, either in person or in heart and in spirit, with all of the people that we love. And this year, all of you who have been part of what I think has been one of the most important efforts that our country has seen in a very long time, all of you will be in my prayers as well. I am wishing you just the most joyous, wonderful holiday that you can possibly enjoy under these circumstances. There are better days ahead. Thanks to all of you. I wish you a Merry Christmas, and I look forward, I almost left without telling you, I look forward to seeing you back here in January. We are going to take a couple of weeks off as we sort of make some improvements and some changes in the show to go forward. When we come back on January 12th, that will be when we will be back with new shows. It'll look a little bit different, but it's going to still be all about making the United States of America an even better place for our children and our grandchildren than it already is. So I hope that you'll stay with us and come back and join us on January 12th when we relaunch. Our new name is going to be For America. And I hope you'll keep an eye out for us and continue to be part of what we're trying to do here. Wishing you all a very Merry Christmas, a blessed and healthy New Year. Thank you for being with us at Vote for America on LPTV.
The end is coming. The end of the noise and lies. The end of the chaos and division. The end of the hate. In its place, a new America is ready to stand tall again. Ready to restore the goodness in the heart of our nation. Ready to put people before politics. Ready to lead, to innovate, to grow, to heal. It won't always be easy. There are tough times to come. COVID to be defeated. An economy to restore. But that new day is coming. A day when words like caring, competent, and professional won't be insults. A day when compassion and character mean more than celebrity. A day when every American's rights are respected and valued. That day is coming because of your hard work, your commitment, your energy and passion. That day is coming because of your vote. Joe Biden, our president. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.